Well, tell me.
Well, the girl that was driving the wrong way on the freeway in Diamond Bar that made the news, because she died, or she didn't die, but her sister, her her aunt, her I don't know. There, 3 generations of that family were killed in one instant. Her life will never be the same. She's going to be, if she doesn't get the death penalty, she'll be in jail for the rest of her life. So her life is done just because of it. And she had had a DUI prior to that. So I fail to understand how that didn't. Anyway, the aunt, they were talking about how their family was completely devastated by this one event, this one night, this one call, and it was over. That wasn't the most. It was the guy who had just. He was 45 years old, and he's looking at the camera. And he's saying, I just spoke with my wife. And he lost his wife and his 3 kids. And you could tell that his life is done. His life is worse than theirs because he's living it on a daily basis. And this happened 10 years ago. And he's still like that. And he's never going to change. That's the way the rest of his life. So I talk about being free from alcohol and that hell. That was something I did. Somebody else did this to him, and his life is living hell every day now because of it. So that drunk driver killed those 4 people, but they sentenced him to spend the rest of his life in hell, a living hell. I don't even know how to. That. And if you're if you are a Christian or religious, you know that you can't commit suicide if you want to get into heaven. It's right there in the book. You can't do it. So you have to wait until you're called.
Or homicide.
Somebody kill you?
He could kill somebody. What happened to the person who killed his family?
They really didn't focus on the drunk drivers except for one, and that was, she got 24 years. They didn't even say anything about the girl that in Diamond Bar. They didn't say anything. There was the kid, 20 years old, he's in college, and his sister was the one. It was over here in Colton, I think it was. They were the 5 in the car, and they had been drinking, and they crashed into a freeway, concrete pillar. And she didn't die right away because they found her trying to get out of the car, but they burned to death. So, and that was because of alcohol. That's why. He was speeding and so forth and so on. But so that one wasn't a drunk driver killing somebody. That one was people drinking and going out and dying. Never. So that's quite an end to a good evening. Is to get drunk and die. They were all young too. They were all college. So I guess that kind of just. But the kid who got the call that his sister had died in the car was there speaking at the mat, and you could tell that he's never going to be the same either. And so many, I mean, the stories are all up there. One thing that also struck me was that they were showing all these crashes, and they were showing all these automobiles, and you couldn't recognize a one. There was even some that I couldn't, they didn't even look like automobiles. I didn't see tires, I didn't see anything. There was just carnage, just twisted metal. Even with all the safety features and everything, if you're doing 100 miles an hour and you're drunk and you slam into a tree, there ain't going to be much left. And there sure isn't going to be much left of you. That, yeah, I think that Mothers Against Drunk Driving. There was one thing that they touched on and made sure everybody understood, that they're not just there for to get people to stop drinking and driving. They're also there to help the families that are left over to get by, to figure out what to do now, because it leaves people in a kind of limbo, especially if it's your whole family. What do you do? I mean, they're lost. They're in shock, and so they help with that, and they help pass laws, and there's a bunch of stuff. So it's worth going to, you know. And they openly let, there was, I don't know, 10, 20 people there that were just sitting in, you know. They didn't have, you have to pay a fee. They didn't have to pay a fee. They're sitting in. So that's probably a good thing, you know. I could see that happening at schools, especially high school. That's when things started for me, and I know that's when things start for a lot of people. So if you could at least catch it then, before people do start going out and running their lives with this, then that would be great.
How many years did you drink? Can you say I drank from age?
You know, my dad was an alcoholic. My grandfather was an alcoholic. It was kind of a tradition. Let's keep it in the family type. When I was young, I said, no, there's no way I'm not gonna smoke. I'm not gonna drink. So I started smoking when I was about 18, and I started drinking when I was about 16. And but I didn't really become an alcoholic till about 25, 26, when all the things started happening that happen in life. You start getting successful, you start your family and everything, and now you realize that, oh my gosh, I got all these responsibilities and everything. I better start drinking every night.
And how old were you when you stopped drinking?
54.
Can you say
I was
started? 50. So I started when I was 16 and I quit when I was 54.
Yeah. No, I started when I was 16 and I quit when I was 53. 53, almost 54.
That's a many years.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I figure, I think I've probably done enough drinking for about 5 people during that time. It had gotten to the point where I was drinking a half of one of those big bottles of Crown Royal. That was my thing. I didn't like anything else. Just Crown Royal. But I'd go to Costco and I'd pick up a couple cases. I called them 6-packs. You get a case, 6 of those big bottles. That's 6-pack.
How long did it take you to drink that?
A month.
I drank that in a week. 6 big bottles in a week, plus beer.
No.
Yes, I did. Anyway, you were great.